In the previous example, we used useReducer with simple values. The state was just a number, and the actions were just strings. It's a good way to learn the fundamentals, but real applications rarely stay this simple. Very often, you will need state with multiple related values and actions that carry extra data, not just a label. In this lesson, we will look at how useReducer works with more complex state and action objects. To make it practical, we will build a small shopping cart. Think about what a shopping cart needs to do. You can add items, remove items, change quantities, show totals, and clear the entire cart. There is a lot of related data that must stay in sync. And this is a perfect situation for useReducer. Back in VS Code, let's create a new file in the source folder called shopping cart with reducer.jsx. Define and export the component. Export const shopping cart with reducer is equal to an arrow function. We return a div element, shopping cart. Now let's think about the UI. We will show a list of products that you can add to the cart. Then we will show the cart contents and totals. No fancy styling, just focusing on the functionality to understand useReducer. So let's start with some sample products. Within the component, I'm going to paste an array of 3 products. Each object represents a product. It contains an ID, 123, name, React course, Node.js course, and JavaScript bundle, and then the price, $49.99, $39.99, $89.99. For the JSX, add a heading and map through these products. So within the div tag, add an h2 that says products, and after the h2, curly braces, products.map. We get access to each product in the array, and we return in h3 the product name, so product.name, followed by the $sign, and then product.price. Let's wrap the h3 element in a div element and specify the key prop. Key is equal to product.id. Next, below the h3 tag, add the add to cart button. So button, the text is add to cart. Now to make this interactive, we need state management. So at the top, import useReducer from React. Inside the component, at the very top, call useReducer, so useReducer, with the reducer function and the initial state as the 2 arguments. useReducer returns a pair of values, which we will destructure using the array destructuring syntax. The current state, which we will call state, and a dispatch function. Both reducer and initial state are yet to be defined, so let's do that now. First, think about the state. With the counter, state was just a number, but a shopping cart needs multiple pieces of data. Let's define the initial state outside the component. Const initial state, and this is going to be equal to an object. First, we need to track the items in the cart, so let's add an items array. So items is an empty array. We also want to show the total price of all items. So total amount, 0 to start with. And then let's track the total number of items as well. So total items will also start at 0. Now the items array will hold the products in the cart, and each item will have an ID, name, and price, as well as quantity. The total amount is the sum of all item prices times their quantities. And total items is the total number of items in the cart. Next, let's define the reducer function. Remember, a reducer accepts the current state and an action and returns the new state based on the action. So const reducer is equal to accepts state and an action and returns the new state based on the action. Let's add a switch statement to handle the different action types that will result in state transitions. The switch expression is action.type, and we always need a default case where we return the same state if the action type is not recognized. So return the original state. But notice something new here. Earlier, our actions were plain strings like increment, but now the action is an object. We will use action.type to describe what happened, and action.payload to carry extra data such as the product to add or remove. This pattern is very common when working with reducers. Back in VS Code, let's add our first action type, adding an item to the cart. So case add underscore item. And when we add an item, two scenarios are possible. The item is already in the cart, in which case we want to increase its quantity, or the item is new to the cart, in which case we want to push it into the list with quantity set to 1. Let's add the code to handle both scenarios. First, find the item in the cart if it exists. So const existing item index is equal to state.items.findIndex. We need an item such that item.id is equal to action.payload.id. Remember, payload refers to the product we want to add to cart, and we access ID for that product. If the IDs match, we have found the item. Next, we need a variable to hold the updated items. So let updated items. Now, if the existing item index is non-negative, the item already exists and we can increase its quantity. So if existing item index is greater or equal to 0, updated items is equal to the current state.items, and then updated items of existing item index is equal to a new object. We spread updated items of existing item index, and then we update just the quantity to updated items of existing item index dot quantity plus 1. If existing item index is -1, the item is new and we need to add it to the cart. So else updated items is equal to the array. We spread the current items, and then we add the new item. So action.payload is spread, and then quantity is set to 1. Finally, we need to return the new state. We will spread the existing state and update all three properties. So return an object where we will spread the existing state, and then we will update items to updated items, total amount to updated items dot reduce. This will be an arrow function. We get access to the accumulator and the current item, and we add the two. So total plus item dot price times item dot quantity. The initial value is 0. We will also set total items to updated items dot reduce, pass in a callback function. We get access to the accumulator and the current item, and we add total plus item dot quantity. The initial value is 0. So this case updates the array and both totals in one place. This is a big advantage of the reducer pattern. All the related logic lives together. And please note, all of the logic here is just regular JavaScript. It has nothing to do with React itself. All we are doing is operating on an array of objects in JavaScript. All right, now we can wire up the dispatch function to the add to cart button click handler. So onClick is equal to an arrow function, and we call dispatch. To dispatch, we won't just pass a string anymore. We will pass an object with type set to add underscore item and payload set to the current product in the loop. These are the same as the action types and payload we defined in the reducer. So now clicking the button will trigger the add item case in the reducer. Now that we have the interactivity, next let's update the JSX to display the shopping cart below the products. Let's add another div tag, an h2 that says shopping cart. And in the next line, we will check if the shopping cart is empty. So state.items.length. And if that is equal to 0, we render a paragraph tag, your cart is empty. If it's not empty, let's display the items. So a div element, curly braces, state.items.map. We pass in a callback function. And for each item in state, we render a div tag with key set to item.id. And then within the div tag, a paragraph tag where we render item.name, the price, so dollar, and then item.price times item.quantity. And let's render the totals at the bottom. An h3, total items, state.total items, another h3, total amount, state.total amount dot toFixed 2. All right, we have a working shopping cart. Let's import this in app.jsx and test it out. So import shopping cart with reducer from shopping cart with reducer and render the component. In the browser, we see our list of products. React $49.99, add to cart, Node.js JavaScript bundle. And at the bottom, we have our shopping cart. Your cart is empty, total item 0, total amount 0.0. When we click add to cart on the React course, it appears in the cart. 49 times 1, total items 1, total amount $49.99. Click again, and we have not a number for quantity. Let's go back to VS Code and check what's wrong. So we already have an existing item. So if it's greater than 0, quantity, this should be closed here. So updated item index dot quantity. Save the file, go back to the browser, refresh, add a React course, add again, and we see 49.99, quantity 2, and we see the updated total items as well as amount. Add the Node.js course, and we see Node.js course for $39.99 times 1, total items 3, and the total amount. Both items show with correct totals. Next, let's allow removing items completely. Back in the reducer, let's add a new case. This is going to be case remove underscore item. Once again, this is going to be a lot of JavaScript logic. First, we need to filter out the item. So const filtered items is equal to state.items.filter item such that item.id is not equal to action.payload.id. We are basically creating a new array called filtered items with all the products except the product whose ID matches the payload ID. And this will be from our button click, which we will implement in just a minute. Once we have the filtered items, return the new state with updated totals. So return the existing state, but update items with filtered items. Total amount is going to be filtered items dot reduce, and the same logic as before with total comma item, where we add total with the item price multiplied by item quantity. Similarly, total items is going to be filtered items dot reduce, and then the same callback function as before, total comma item, and we add total with item dot quantity. The initial value is 0. In the JSX, add a remove button for each cart item. So after the paragraph tag in shopping cart, add a button with the text remove. On click is equal to an arrow function where we call dispatch, and to dispatch we pass in an object with type set to remove underscore item, and payload is going to be just an object with ID set to item.id. Back in the browser, add a React course. We see the remove button, click remove, and the item is removed. Add Node.js and remove. Works perfectly. Now a cart usually lets you change quantities without removing items first. So let's add another case to the reducer. case update underscore quantity. First, let's check if the quantity is 0. So if action.payload.quantity is equal to 0, we simply remove the item. So return reducer state comma type remove underscore item, and payload ID is going to be action.payload.id. What we are doing here is interesting. If the new quantity is 0, we call reducer again with a remove item action. This is a simple way to reuse logic we have already written. Next, if the quantity is not 0, let's update the quantity for the specific item. So const updated quantity items is equal to state.items.map. You pass in a callback function, and for each item, if item.id is equal to action.payload.id, we spread the item properties, and then we set quantity to action.payload.quantity. And if it's a different item, we simply return it as it is. Finally, we return the updated state. So return state, where we update items to updated quantity items, total amount to updated quantity items dot reduce, and we use the same logic as before. Total comma item, we add total with item dot price times item dot quantity. Similarly, total items is updated quantity items dot reduce, and the callback function total comma item, we add total with item dot quantity. The initial value is 0 in both cases. In the JSX, add quantity buttons before the remove button. So button, the text is going to be the minus sign. On click, we call dispatch, passing in an object with type set to update quantity, and payload set to an object where we set id to item.id and quantity to item.quantity minus 1. Similarly, we can copy paste this button, change minus to plus, and then instead of quantity minus 1, plus 1. So we're able to decrement and increment the cart quantity. Finally, let's add a way to clear the entire cart in the reducer. So a new case clear cart, and we simply return the initial state. This resets everything. In the JSX, show a clear cart button only when there are items. So at the very end, curly braces, state.items.length is greater than 0. And if that's the case, render a button that says clear cart. On click of this button, arrow function, call dispatch with type set to clear cart. And there's no payload for this one. That's completely optional. All right, our code is now ready. Let's test everything. Add items, update quantities, remove items, and clear cart. It all works perfectly. If you want to see the flow of actions, add a console log statement at the top of the reducer. So console log, action dispatched, and then log the action. Now, every time you click a button, you will see something like action dispatched, type add item, payload, ID 1, name React course, as well as the price. Or you will see something like type update quantity. This makes debugging really nice. You can see the exact sequence of user actions that led to any state change. All right, I want to point out 2 quick conventions before we wrap up. First, action types are usually written in uppercase. This is just a convention, but it helps distinguish them from other strings. You can take it a step further and use a const for the action types. For example, const add underscore item is equal to add underscore item, and similarly the other 3. And now you can update the reducer to use consts. So this is going to be add item, remove item, update quantity, and clear cart. Similarly, in the dispatch functions, add item, update quantity, remove item, and clear cart. This is a good practice to avoid typos and make the code more maintainable. Second, the payload property is also a convention. You could call it data or anything else, but payload is what most developers expect. To summarize, useReducer can accept complex state objects with multiple related values, and actions can carry additional data using the payload property. All the state update logic is centralized in the reducer function, and related values always update together. Alright, now you've seen useReducer with both simple and complex state and actions. We've got a few more details to cover about useReducer, so let's continue.